So who am I? So graduated from Queen's University, and I didn't know what I wanted to do, like most people. Started selling and installing solar panels, wood stoves, pellet stoves in 1996. That's back before people knew what SOAR was. Our company name back then was Renewable Energy of Plum Hollow. Does anybody here know where Plum Hollow is? Another cheese factory town. So Plum Hollow has 3 houses, 2 barns still, and more cattle than people. And we started back there back in the 90s. And believe it or not, we became Canada's biggest pellet stove seller and in all of Canada. So we were pretty happy back then. And on the old cheese factory, that's where we had our store. We had a 3 kilowatt wind turbine. We had a bubble action solar hot water system, and a composting toilet, a masonry heater. We were almost off grid in a commercial building back in the mid-90s. In 2003, I installed, has anybody here heard of the Enerworks solar system? Developed at Queen's University. Put one of the prototypes in my home, my mom and dad's home. I don't know if you recognize that figure in the picture. It's me. Oh, yeah, it's David Suzuki. In 2008, in our store in Kingston, we were blessed that we're having the World Wind Energy Conference. We were helping out with at St. Lawrence College, and Dr. David Suzuki came by the store and helped us flip the switch of the first commercial building to sell power back to the grid, to do solar hot water with a wind turbine, solar panels, an off-grid system on it. We were pretty excited. It's like having a little rock band and Mick Jagger sits in on a session, you know. Having David Suzuki there. And from our conversation, anybody heard of the microfit program? Anybody seen solar panels in the countryside? There was a program to do that. A meeting at our store in 2008 launched the Green Energy and Economy Act in 2009 because of David Suzuki. He left our store, went and met with the Premier. They flew to Germany, and a year later we had the Green Economy and Energy Act in Ontario. So I sat on the advisory board for the Ontario government about introducing solar panels in the province. Put a system on my own home. In 2012, our company, Renewable Energy Plum Hollow, we merged with our current company, Friendly Fires, and my business partner up in Peterborough. And 2014, our stores won an international award as the top retail stores in our industry. We opened in Carleton Place. So we have Kingston, Carleton Place, Peterborough, and Cobourg. We're kind of surrounding the area here. And we grew to about 40 to 50 folks. So I had to just bring a picture of my lovely wife and daughter as well. Being first-time dad, pretty excited. Last year, has anyone heard of TSSA? The safety authority in the province, they make sure that things are safe. We were the first retail company to be nominated and to win the award last year. We're pretty proud of that. Usually the companies that win this are Enbridge, Union Gas, the big guys. I couldn't believe that we won. Okay, so we've got a lot of stuff to cover tonight. Hopefully we can get through it all. If there's any questions, just put your hand up and I'll try to answer them as we go along. So I want to start off with this slide because I don't think people know this. Did you know that putting solar on your home is cheaper than buying your power from the grid? Did anybody know that?
What do you mean?
I mean, just that.
No, about installation costs.
Everything. Buying a solar system, paying someone to put it on your home. We're talking about not a short term, but a long-term investment like most homes are. That it will be cheaper than buying hydro from, I assume most folks are rural here, right? Live in the country? Yeah.
Is that over the course of a year or?
No, the course of I'll go over that.
Lifetime?
I'll go over that. No, not the lifetime. But I'll go over that as well. So I just want to put this up just to get your brain thinking. A lot of people like to buy houses rather than rent a house. we often in the store talk about, do you want to buy your power or do you enjoy renting it from Hydro One?
Is that optimum sunlight though?
We're going to go over that. This is good. This slide's working. It's getting everybody's brains going.
But you see, the hydro, when we got it, we couldn't use our own. We had to put it in the grid and then had to use it back. Why was that not allowed?
Yeah, well, let's
It's
talk
still the
about that.
same. I think that is just,
It's crazy.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. This is good. This is great. I like this. Okay, so let's start right back at the beginning. Because when we say solar energy, it could mean a variety of different things. So we have fancy lingo like every industry, solar thermal, or I like to say solar hot water. And then we have solar photovoltaic, or PV for short, or real simple solar electric. So two fundamentally different types of panels. I'll go over the detail, but the one up here, solar electric, we're creating electricity from the sun. Here's a sample of a solar hot water panel where we're creating hot water from the sun. So we had a gentleman ask about solar hot water, so we're going to cover that here as well. Just because often people get confused or they're not clear on what we mean by solar hot water or solar electric. So two types of solar hot water systems. Solar domestic hot water. What do I mean by domestic? Another fancy term. I mean the water we use in our home every day. Heating our water that we use inside the house. And solar pool heating. Do we have any folks with pools here? Anybody here who knows somebody with a pool? We'll cover that as well. The most cost-effective thing we can do in our area with solar is solar pool heating. Those who want to heat their pool and don't have this, they are throwing money out the window. Okay, so domestic hot water. Anybody here have a solar domestic hot water system on their home? Yeah? Okay, we got a couple. So how does this work? So we have panels up on the roof. We're in Canada. Things freeze in the wintertime. So we have to use some sort of liquid to extract the heat from the sun from all years round. So I noticed that just down the road here, Madoc got, I was surprised, at McDonald's not too long ago. Has anybody here had a McDonald's milkshake or a Dairy Queen Blizzard or, no? No? Soft serve ice cream? A Twinkie? Anybody, you've had a Twinkie, right? So inside of all of those things is propylene glycol. It's not ice cream at McDonald's, folks. It's propylene glycol. It tastes pretty good sometimes, too. So propylene glycol is what we use inside of, typically inside of solar hot water panels. We use it because if it spills, it won't hurt the critters out there, it won't hurt our family pets. And then oh, I do have a pointer, this is great. So then we have a hot water tank in the basement. That's, call it just a storage tank, because we have think of your existing hot water tank you have in the house now. And we're going to do this all ahead of that. So we're going to take from here the propylene glycol. This is getting really, really hot. We're going to go down. We got a little heat exchanger, and we're going to preheat the water coming out of your well, or if you're in town, out of the city system. So the water's going to come in. We're going to preheat it in this tank, get it up to temperature, and then we're going to send it to your house. Or send it to your tank. Your existing tank will top up that water if it needs to, and then it will send it to your house. So what are we doing? We're preheating your water, because there are times a year in Canada where we don't get enough sun to heat our water. Right? There's times a year when we get all the sun we need. So if sized correctly, we can provide all your hot water needs for most of the summer. On an annual basis, we talk about, I don't know if you can see this down at the bottom, we talk about 50% of your annual hot water needs can be provided if sized correctly. 50%. Yeah?
How many panels?
Depends on the size of your family. So typical rule of thumb, how many panels was the question if you didn't hear it at the back? So I'm showing 2 panels up here. So think of 1 to 2 people per panel, roughly. So a family of 4 would put up 4 panels. Family of 6 would be 3-panel system. So typically a 1 or 2 panel system would go up. Make sense?
Is that the panel you're talking about?
No, I didn't. They're 4 foot by 8 foot and takes 4 of us to carry it in. It's heavy. Yeah, exactly. So with the panels, there's 2 types. So there's one type's called a flat plate collector. What it means is in here it's like a flat plate, very technical, flat plate. On the back of it is typically some copper tubing, and that black absorbs the heat, transfers it to the propylene glycol, which takes it down into the house. Yeah, question back there.
What's the capital cost for a family of 4 for a solar?
What's that?
What's the capital cost?
Capital cost of putting this in? Yeah, it's not cheap. So family of 4, 2-panel system, you're going to be talking about $6,000 to $8,000 installed, roughly. Yeah, roughly. And there you can see sort of a flat plate collector. I think that's a customer of ours' house right here. So propylene glycol comes in, heats it up, goes in the bottom, typically out the top, and back into your house. Evacuated tube. If you've ever gone by and saw a solar panel, it looked like a whole bunch of round tubes. How they work is in here, in the tubes, each tube, it's under a vacuum. So the whole idea is that it doesn't need as much sun to warm up. The vacuum, where there's some propylene glycol in here as well, it'll heat up, go to the end, and then the water going, or the propylene glycol going to and from your house will go through this heat exchanger here to pick up the heat and take it in. So some advantages of, there's a picture of one there. Advantages of evacuated tube is if you live in a climate that's very cloudy, these are more efficient at extracting the heat out of the sun. So if you lived in rainy England, for example, evacuated tubes are very effective in that because they're under vacuum. In our climate, we've worked with the Queen's University Solar Lab in Kingston. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other in our climate. It doesn't really matter which system you use, whether it be flat plate or evacuated tube. The drawback of the evacuated tube is those tubes will lose vacuum. I mean, things do lose vacuum over time, and you will have to replace them at some point. Where a lot of people like to put something up on their roof, they don't want to think about it, and that's where the flat plate collector sort of wins out a little bit in our neighborhood.
Does it have to be on a roof?
Does not have to be on a roof, no. Why I will talk about roof all the time is because it's there, it's typically not shaded, because there's usually not trees next to it. From the roof down to your mechanical room is usually not too far, 16, 20 feet at most. And if done properly, one person brought up, if I remember right, the roof damage. I've been doing this 20 years. Knock on wood, we haven't had issues with that. Every time we've had a claim where water's coming into the roof or something, we typically get to the house and something else is going on. It's hitting our stuff and showing up. But if done properly, like anything on the roof, if done properly. So this type of system has really gone out of style. And I think getting to the gentleman at the back here, what's the capital cost of this? The government, in not too distant past, used to fund this like crazy. So if we're back in the old, what was the program they had out? The renovation program that they had out there in the early 2000s? Yeah. You could put one of the rebates you got was crazy. You could put one of these systems on for, back then I'm thinking $3,000, $2,500 after you got all your rebates back from the government. So it was very lucrative and took off. This is if you want to talk about your effect on carbon, solar hot water has the quickest, because using hot water in our homes is one of the biggest energy draws. We have space heating our homes, and then heating hot water is like the next highest use of energy we have in our homes. So a lot of people in our industry love solar hot water because they know it has the biggest impact on the home. We have a long history with this because we've worked closely with Dr. Harrison down at the Queen's Solar Lab. And actually our in-house engineer, Jason, actually did his master's with that. And I've been involved since day one, my own home and my parents' home with a beta system that was developed there. And I'm going to go through and talk about the savings of tons of greenhouse gas emissions as we go through all this. I know sometimes climate change, especially with the president to the south, a lot of folks are talking about climate change and maybe not understanding it or believing it. What I do know is recent reports from the UN says that 97% of the scientists in the world believe that man is affecting climate change or the human race. So if it was 50%, I would question it. 97% is a pretty high number. So I'm going to talk about climate change and a little bit about greenhouse gas emissions and how you can save that in what we're doing. So, solar pool panel. Let's hand one of these bad boys around. So we're pretty excited. We've been selling this pool panel. Just take a look at that and maybe pass it around, show it. This is just a small version. We've been dealing with this Canadian company for as long as I've been around, for 20 years. And this is pretty simple. Most people want 80 degree Fahrenheit water from May 24th weekend through to Labor Day. And if sized correctly, and I'll say that again, if sized correctly, we can do this. A lot of this technology was sold into Ontario based on Florida sun data. Nobody from Florida comes to Ontario in the wintertime. We go there typically, right? So a lot of systems, a lot of people, if you hear naysayers on solar hot water, they probably just didn't have a big enough system. You need a lot of panels, don't get me wrong. An average system is 6 4-foot by 10-foot panels. It's not a small space. You need a lot. But it works pretty simply. You have a pump and a filter. We come out of the pump and filter, and there's usually a little diverter valve, right? Opens and closes, says send the water to the panels or don't, based on what temperature you want the pool. If you leave this on in July, you will have 90 degree, 95 degree water if you want to have that. My mom did that this summer. I thought she was crazy, but she loved getting in and feeling like it was a bath. The diverter valve is usually connected to a thermostat. You set it at 80, 85, my mom's case 95, and it'll send it to the roof if the pool requires heat to get up there.
Can you use the solar pool heaters for the household domestic hot water? You know, instead of using an evacuated tube or...
Great question. Question is, could we use these panels to heat our household water, because those panels are way less money than the other ones, to heat inside the house? You can't, unfortunately. This design is really to have water pumped through it. To pump propylene glycol through that would have a chemical reaction that wouldn't react well to it as well. So unfortunately, yeah.
Those look like really little holes.
Really little holes.
If you have a lot of calcium in your water, in your well water, it might not.
Well, this is for your pool.
I know, but if your pool's full of that kind of water.
Yeah, when we put it into our pool, we're putting chlorine and stuff or bromine in there, and it takes all the calcium. The question was, when you see the panel, when you see the panel, you'll notice there's an 1.5-inch header across the top, and then it looks like a piece of corrugated cardboard, and then there's these tiny little channels in there on a little flat piece. And could stuff get in there? We often get that question, stuff could get in there and sort of block it up in a sense. And because we're coming out of the filter right here, it doesn't. Ontario, anybody here been to is it Ontario place that has the water slides? No? Kids, grandkids taking them? No? You guys gotta go there, it's fun. If you get up on one of their tube rides, I did this a few years ago with some nieces and nephews, and you stand up there, you will see solar hot water panels all over the place there. That's what they use to heat their hot water, because the sun is free, right, once it's up there. So like I was saying before, everybody here okay with Fahrenheit? Yeah. Okay. I grew up when they brought in the metric system, so I think Fahrenheit sometimes and metric the other. So 80-degree water from May 24th or Victoria Day weekend through to Labor Day. If you put more panels on, you can stretch that season. You can get warmer water longer. But most people, they just want to do, they're really concerned about that. Before May 24th, it's not really, don't feel like swimming unless you got little kids. So typically we're getting an extra 3 months of 80-degree water in a pool. Setup costs, capital costs, setup costs, $4,000 to $6,000, which is very similar to installing a gas heater or a heat pump, typically, if you're running gas lines and stuff. But the big thing here is once you put it in, there's no ongoing cost that you have to worry about. Once it's in, and these panels, that panel that you're passing around has a 20-year warranty. Somebody brought up earlier, what about the warranties on panels? How long will they last? So 20-year warranty on that panel you see there.
My Techno solar system lasted 23 years.
How are you? I didn't see that.
Good. Now I have a sprinkler system.
Yeah, 20 years. Long
23
time.
years.
Yeah, you had a long time. And you got it right from Montreal, eh?
Yes.
Yeah. These folks are out of Montreal, the panels we get from. Very, very good company. It's a father who's now the son and daughter running the company.
And in June and July, if you don't shut it off, the pool gets too hot.
Yeah, June and July, if you don't shut it off, the pool gets too hot. So if you know anybody with a pool, or if you're thinking about getting a pool, it's something to give some thought to.
Now, why can't you pump your domestic water through this and back, like after you've treated your water from your well or the city, why can it not go through this system?
Theoretically, it could. First thing is that we could only do it from May 24 to Labor Day, because beyond that, we're going to have freeze-up issues. That's why it marries good to a pool. These panels are not for potable water. They're not built or designed for potable water, so that could be an issue. So that's, could you? Yeah, sure. You put a garden hose up there too. You could creative and do something like that, yeah.
Can you run glycol through those?
No, the glycol would react with the plastic. Good question, guys. Thank you. I love getting these questions. Okay, photovoltaic. Don't you just love that big, long, fancy word? So we talked about solar electricity. So that's sort of our piece on solar hot water. Think of it in our climate, we're heating the water in the house, or we're attacking our pool. So with solar electricity or solar voltaics, we've got two big things to think about. You're mentioning the gentleman who lives off-grid. So we look at the grid in two ways. We're either connected to it or we're not. Off-grid is, as someone asked, pulling the plug. And grid tie is being connected to the grid and having solar electric panels or PV panels on your roof. Okay? So what is PV or photovoltaic panels? And there's one up here you can come up and see later. Might be a little big to pass around. But with this, how it works, I'll bring it closer. And if you get up close to a solar panel, what you're going to see, they're not very thick. Like it's pretty thin here. You're going to see a whole bunch of solder lines going up and down. Whoops. And you're going to see some glass on it. There's a little bit of background, the white background behind the cells. And essentially what we're doing, you go back to your high school physics class, and remember electrons and all that stuff. Most of us try to forget it. And basically what we're doing is we're getting them all excited, and we're sending them through these channels, up and down. So a lady in the back asked earlier from my notes about what do we do with this once the life expectancy is gone. So the first thing I'll say is these panels have a 25-year warranty. 25-year warranty. I'll say that one more time. It's under warranty for 25 years.
See the full efficiency of when it was first sold?
So it is a power rated warranty, and what that means is in 25 years it is guaranteed to put out 80% of the power it'll put out today. Okay?
So if it goes bad within that 25 years, will the manufacturer take that back?
That's a great question. Will the manufacturer be around in 25 years? They're great questions. So we've always tried to, and that's a question we have, because as a company that's been doing this for 20 years, we got systems out there that are, I showed you those panels, they just look like they're rated of, a science textbook. So, knock on wood, we put up thousands and thousands and thousands of these. Have we had some break? Yeah, I got guys that get on a forklift and go to lift things and smash them. I get guys up on roofs that drop them. So they'll break, because this is a tempered glass. So this glass, just so you know, is the same glass that you use on your fireplace, right? So a lot of people say, well, will they break up on the roof? Will they hit, hail? That sort of thing. They do a bowling ball test on them. They do, can't remember all the length, but they have a specific point they try to bring. But this is tempered glass. So if you've owned a wood stove or fireplace, you know what that is. So 25-year warranty. We've had them in space because it runs all of our satellites, right? The solar panels do. We've had them in space since the 1950s that are still working. So these will outlast my lifetime, hopefully my daughter's lifetime. But what happens if you do have to deal with it? Well, we've got glass, we got silica. Silica is a form of sand, right? These are just silica wafers in here. And solder, and a little bit of aluminum frame, and we've got some copper wire on the back. So for the most part, we could take this panel apart today and put most of it in our recycling bin. At least in Kingston, they take most of it, or the metal would go back to a metal recycler. So there is some thought when they develop this, but the reality is this. 25-year warranty, we probably won't be doing much.
Yeah. Are they made here or away?
Great question. Made here or away? They were made here, and one of the things that we pushed for when we started the microfit or the FIT program, which we'll talk a little bit about later, was that we wanted Ontario manufacturing, and we had that. And then there's this thing called the World Trade Organization. And we actually had, if you installed the solar panels, a system on your house, a certain percentage had to be made in Ontario when the program first came out. It took about 2 to 3 years for the World Trade Organization to step in and kibosh that. Most of the panels we get don't come from China because after the World Trade Organization said you can't do that, about 2 years later, the Canadian government put a 147% tariff on Chinese-made panels. So you won't see Chinese-made because the price just goes out of this world. I'm sure the WTO at some point will rule against that again. So most of the stuff we're getting is like India, Taiwan, places like that.
From away.
From away, yeah. And even the Canadian manufacturers are bringing their cells in from those places. So we're an assembly. Anybody making it here in Ontario or Canada is really just assembling the panels. They're not growing the silica. They're not doing that. They're assembling with robots and doing the soldering.
What's the percentage efficiency, please?
That's a great question. What is the percentage efficiency? I don't know that anymore because there's a lot of we used to worry about that a lot, like what's the percentage efficiency of a panel. And what we've looked at more is what most people have asked us is what's the cost per watt or per kilowatt? What's my overall cost? Because we can get solar panels that NASA makes that the efficiencies are out of this world, but the cost of, a square foot of that panel is like, 300 times the cost of this panel here. So I don't know them off the top of my head because we know more about cost per watt and that sort of thing.
Is that an inverter on the back of that panel?
No, on the back, is that an inverter on the back of this panel? No, it's just a junction box with the MC4 connectors. So these wires just plug into the next solar panel on each side. And that's just a little box where all the power comes through.
So if one breaks, they all break, or is it worth go around?
No, it goes around. It's not Christmas tree lights. I got some at home. I hate Christmas trees.
Has the price actually come down a bit since they first introduced these?
Yeah.
Like
Has the
that?
price come down a bit? Yeah. So when I first started doing this, let's see if I can put this in perspective. So this panel, how big is this panel? It's 200 watt. So when I first started, these is like 250 watts. So when I first started in the industry in the late 90s, this panel would have cost close to $3,000. And we sell 250 watt module now is
Obsolete.
if we look at a price per watt, it's $1 a watt. So this would be $250 now. I've been doing it 20 years, but yeah, it's come down. Now, will it go further? I mean, we don't know, but to me, I just can't get over how cheap they are now.
Do you think they'll ever offer any microfit programs again?
Will they offer the microfit programs again? Bring that question up in a little bit. The quick answer is no. The quick answer is no. Okay, so roof mount. Somebody brought up earlier. Sorry. Great questions. Thanks, guys, for asking these questions. I like this. So roof mount. Typically, a big system will be about 800 square feet, or the largest system that we can put on under the current rules. With that, well, you can put on bigger systems. You're just going to pay. The government has set sort of if you do this size or less, the paperwork is easy. If you go bigger than that, then the paperwork and costs go through the roof. So 800 square feet, optimum angle, it's basically the same latitude. Is it latitude? I always get latitude and longitude mixed up. We're at the 38 parallel here. Latitude. So whatever latitude you are, that's pretty much your angle. So for us, a 412 pitched roof, 512 pitched roof, which is a normal pitched roof, is great. When we put these on, I should have brought some feet and stuff. Underneath here, there's feet and rail, and we're using all aluminum, all stainless steel connectors all through there. And how we penetrate the roof, it's all aluminum penetrations. All watertight, that's really important. We have actually a procedure that we train our guys on before they go out and install this stuff to make sure, like I said, we've been really lucky that we've been doing this for so many years and haven't had an issue. And also, you have to have a structural engineer sign off. When panels really got going in like 2009, 2010, there was a lot of concern and worry about will they be able to handle the load of these panels on your roof. And it was a big concern and nobody knew, but what we came to find out is that solar panels have a slip coefficient. Roof shingles don't. So has anybody here got a steel roof? Did you ever come out in the morning and there's a big pile of snow in front of you? Same thing happens with these. Because what happens when a solar electric panel gets going, when it sees the sun, even through the snow, it heats up. Part of the process of creating electricity is that it gets warm. In actual fact, solar panels work the best this time of year, in January, February, because it's cool. So their efficiency actually increases this time of year because it's cooler out. There's not a lot of sun, so they don't put out a lot, but they're pretty efficient. So they get hot and are warm, and then what happens is over time, the snow tends to slide off. Now, if you get freezing rain and snow and freezing rain and snow, yeah, you can have a situation where it could stay on there for a bit. But for the most part, they get warm and they shut off. So what we learned pretty quickly on is the structural engineers, they're just like, yeah, most snow loading in the province is fine with this. They're more worried about wind loading, so when we put it on the roof, they don't want us overhanging the peak of the roof or down near the east trough because the wind could pick it up, but if we keep it on the roof, it's not a problem.
Question?
Yeah.
Are home insurers quite comfortable with these things being on the roof? Do you
Yeah.
have to do any special arrangements with them for coverage?
So question is, home insurers, your insurance company, do you have, how are they feeling about this? In the early days, they didn't understand it. But typically, what's your insurance go up per year for your solar panels? I think mine's $200.
Mine was 120.
120.
All they were
So
really
there is a
concerned about,
premium there.
There's a premium. Yeah.
yeah, but all they were really concerned about was the actual value of the physical materials that were installed in or on the house. So in the event of fire or what have you, it's just replacement value.
Replacement value is more
Like
important.
anything
That's
else in the
right.
house.
That's right. You're putting, we'll talk about pricing, but roughly, let's call it, for easy round numbers, 25 or 30 grand on your roof. And they just want to cover that replacement cost if something were to happen. The house gets on fire and stuff. Yeah, in the back.
How many panels does it take to make up the 800 square feet?
How many panels does it take to make up 800 square feet? We're talking about 30, 35, 38 panels. Yeah, close to 40, roughly. Yeah.
Can they be installed on most roofing materials?
Yeah. So did you have one in mind? The question was, got a steel roof? Yeah. So steel roofs, shingled roof, cedar shake roof, old barn roofs. I mean, yeah, as long as it's done properly, it can go on any roof. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so then there's roof mount, and now we're going to talk about ground mount. Oh yeah, sure.
If you have a fire and your panels are working great and the fire comes with the water, can you turn it off, or is a chance of getting electrocuted or anything?
Yeah, great question. So, concern about fire. If you had a fire in your home, what happens essentially with this? So, there are safety shutoffs on the side of the house. I've worked with the Ontario fire marshals down in Toronto, and we've done a lot of training across the province with fire departments, or we set a protocol for training. But yeah, there's shutoffs. Part of putting this on your roof is outside your house there has to be a DC disconnect, a big disconnect, that they can go over and just shut it down.
But that's not an automatic thing, it has to be manual.
It's not an automatic thing, it's a manual thing, that's correct.
So if you're not home, it's not gonna get shut off
Well,
until somebody shows up.
I'll back up a bit. The inverter you connect it to, if the inverter doesn't see a load at the other end, it will shut off electronically, but that's not good enough for the code. The code wants you to be able to go and go click. Right, so yes, there is some built-in redundancy there, but codes are, I gotta follow everything. Yeah. Yeah.
You were building a new building, and you got enough of these to make them. Could you use the panels instead of metal roof or shingles or whatever?
We'll get to that in about 5 slides.
All right.
It's called building integrated solar. If you're building a new house, can we use this as part of the structure? Yeah, and we can. We'll talk about that in a second. So the other thing that we've come to learn since 2000. Oh, sorry.
With respect to roofing, what happens when your roof requires replacement?
Oh yeah, that's a great. I love that question. What happens when your roof requires replacing? Yeah. Then you phone me up, we go, we take the panels off, you re-roof it, we come back and put the panels back on. What we have found over the years, is along the edges of the roof. So we got a shingle roof, a steel roof, you know, it's not an issue. But a shingle roof, the panels protect the roof because these panels are about that far off the roof. Probably like 8 inches, 6 inches roughly, because they have feet that stick them up. And what happens is the panels take the blunt of the sun, so the shingles underneath are fine. It's all the shingles around the outside that become an issue. But yeah, they'd have to be taken off and put on. So we often, before we get into a conversation with folks about this, we talk about the roof. What have you got on there? How old are the shingles? If these shingles are 6 or 7 years old, you ought to change that before you do this, right? They're brand new. Okay, that makes sense. And we've had customers do that where they've waited. You know, we put them on later in the fall or something after they got their roof redone. But yeah, you want to make sure that's in decent shape. What I was going to mention is another thing we learned in the early or mid 2000s. That's code now is we put critter guarding. We have to by code. Put critter guarding around the edge of the panels. Because what we didn't realize is little tree rats, squirrels, like to get up in there, and we don't understand it, but they chew the wires off the back of them. We don't know why, they just love it, and so now we put, it's like just little chicken wire, fancy chicken wire you put around it essentially. So they don't get in underneath
It
there.
dries out underneath there enough, you don't get a moss issue or anything?
No, because it's up off the roof, so it dries out underneath there because there's airflow and stuff like that underneath it. Except for when you've got a squirrel's nest and there's 2 dead squirrels from chewing the wires. That becomes fun.
What Brad doesn't want to tell you is that the coating on the wires is the same ingredient as the ice cream.
Yeah, both of them like it, yeah. Okay, that's good, Curtis. Ground mount. So, you know, for aesthetic reasons, some people don't like it on the roof. Why do we put it on the roof? Because there's a structure there. It's already there. We don't have to build a structure. We can just put it on, adapt to the existing structure. Typically, your mechanical room where we're running the wires is, you know, 20 feet away or less. So it makes sense. But in some cases, going and putting on a ground mount, here's a system we just put in, I think it was last year. The guys took this photo. This is down on the Thousand Island Parkway, down towards Gananoque. And in this case, he had a lot of shading, if I remember correctly, on the roof.
House is shaded.
Yeah, his house was shaded. So, you know, it just made sense to put it, and he had lots of space, so we put it aside, and then we just trenched the wire back to the house. Not a problem.
More than 10, is that more than 10?
No, that's a 10 kilowatt system. So that's the maximum size system there. Or it's 9 point.
Correction, it's actually, so this is going to get into the discussion about microfit versus net metering. I'll touch on that just for a second. In microfit, you're only allowed 10 kilowatts.
Yeah.
10 kilowatts input on the DC side and 10 kilowatts AC usable electricity. In net metering, the program that we're into now, that microfit has gone away, that has been available throughout that, was overshadowed by microfit. In any case, for net metering, 10 kilowatts is the maximum only on the AC side.
Yeah,
on the usable electricity side, so you can actually oversize the DC side by as much as 20%, and that's what this customer chose to do.
So in this situation, we have 40 panels, so we're probably at closer to 11 kilowatts.
And those panels are the same, each one of those is one of those?
It's a little bit bigger than what we see
Okay.
here. Yeah, a little bit bigger. We didn't bring the big ones because they're heavy.
How far away from your electricity usage can that be?
How far away can this be from your electricity usage?
So
Hundreds of feet.
There's no loss?
Yes, there is loss, but we size the wire accordingly.
Okay.
So, in my case, I had a garage that was 250 feet away from my house. I dug a trench. I put a $1,500 piece of wire in the ground, and I connected my solar panel to the house, so our solar array to the house. Yeah, so it can be as far away as you want. You're just going to spend more money on wire, if that's okay. So one drawback is this costs more to put in. Obviously, we got sonotubes, concrete structure, and then we got our racking you can see in behind. So it costs more because we've got to build the structure to put the panels on rather than the structure already being there. And that's fine if you want to spend the money on it. One little bit of advantage is you can manually adjust the panels. So when I say a 412 roof is fine, really what we like to see is flat in the summer and like 60 degrees in the winter. Because the sun goes from 115 degrees on the horizon, and then in the wintertime, at the winter solstice, we're at 61 degrees in the horizon, right? So that's why in the summertime it feels like the sun's in the northern sky, because it actually is kind of there, right?
And the ones that automatically adjust are significantly more expensive?
Ha! Good segue. The ones that automatically adjust are significantly more expensive. Yeah, yeah, I should have brought stars. Yeah, so ground mount trackers. So the costs are typically, the benefit is 20 to 25% extra, because what a tracker does is says, there's the sun, and I'm going to track it all day, right? And how a solar panel works the best is when the sun is at 90 degrees to the panel. So if you have a tracker, you can create that 90 degrees from first thing in the morning to late in the evening. So we get a 20%, 20 to 25% more production, but the costs are a lot more. A lot more. I put more than 30%, it's probably a little bit higher, I was being generous there. So, because you've got a 2-ton concrete block, right? Because this thing, we gotta worry about wind, right? Getting underneath that and being a big sail. So you got typically a big concrete and a big mast. There are components in here that make things move, and they break down as well. So you're gonna have to repair those at some point. It's just gear motors and stuff, but they will break down. And when they're just on a roof or on a typical non-tracking ground mount, there's no moving parts, right? We don't have to worry about things.
Can you put a tracker on a roof?
Can you put a tracker on a roof?
Depends on your roof. Can you bring them up or down?
Yeah, there's no real, there used to be years ago, seasonal adjustability on roof mount systems. And we used to install them. What we found is, number one, nobody gets up and adjusts them. They do the first year, maybe the second, but they don't after that. And the cost of going to that, we could just buy 4 more panels and you're going to get the same output for less cost. So can you do it? Yeah, technically, but usually this is about economics, right? Yeah.
You mentioned that there's 30% greater cost with these rotating. What would be a general cost of the ground mount system that you showed previous with 40 systems?
We're talking about 10 kilowatt systems.
Yeah.
Generally, a roof mount system, depending on your roof and other factors, like Brad said, $25,000 to $30,000 investment.
25 to 30,000 on the roof.
Yeah. Ground mount systems, if we're doing all of the installation of the structure,
This here?
typically 35 to 40.
35 to 40. We go to this. We're going to be in the $65,000-ish range. And the economics start really getting skewed by that point. Yeah.
Is there any difference in the life expectancy of the two?
No, it's the same panels. The only thing we're doing here is we're paying for all of this infrastructure down here. Like all this stuff. This is on Wolf Island where we did a lot of them. And see, all this stuff here just costs a lot more money.
And the guarantees are the same?
On the panels are the panels. This stuff, no. It's a moving motor. Right? It has, I don't know, 2-year warranty or something like that. Because it's just a motor that moves the panels like this. So those gears, they have to be greased twice a year. and eventually they'll wear
It's the
out.
same great warranty you get on your car parts.
You got the same great warranty on your car parts.
So on that, who does the consumer deal with? Are you the person that they deal with?
Who does the consumer deal with? Yeah. Well, our model is I live in your community, you come deal with me.
Right, so you intervene with the
Absolutely.
supplier rather than having to
Yeah.
deal with them directly.
Yeah, the drawback was when microfit took off, it became the gold rush. And I remember, we went from having two competitors in this area to 43 within a course of 2 months. My favorite was a guy who did web design, now installed solar panels. I don't understand the connection, but he did it. But what happened as soon as those tariffs went away, we're back to one or two of us again. And there's a lot of stuff out there. Somebody brought up about credibility, and there was a lot of stuff out there that went in that's not so credible. And we're fixing a lot of it. People are calling us. Unfortunately, it's not cheap, but they need to get it fixed, right? Some of the fixes. Yeah.
Well, if you put it on a barn roof like a 412 pitch, comes a couple of good snowstorms, and it freezes on there, you're just about done for the month.
Yeah. If you have a barn roof, and like I was mentioning before, if you get freezing rain, snow, it'll build up a crust and it'll be on there. You're absolutely right. But the good part about that is that month where that happens, the amount of sun we get is so little that, you could lose all your production for January and it wouldn't be that significant. Our real benefit time is, April to October. Like, that is when we want it. That's what we're aiming for. Anything else beside that's kind of a little bit of a bonus.
But I mean, if you had it so you could adjust it.
Oh yeah, if you had it so you could adjust it. Yeah, my dad used to go out and he had the pool rake, and my dad was a millwright, took the pool rake and created this thing on the end, and he'd sit on the roof and or the ground and just do this along the garage and take all the snow off. And he was in the microfit program, so he got an extra $15 that year he did it. And he was in the early where he got the big tariffs. So that's the reality, is the reason why it snows and we get snow and ice and all that is because there isn't no darn sun, and that's why we want to go to Florida.
It costs them $50 to make the rig.
Yeah, it costs them $50 to make, yeah.
So do you put in if you're dealing in a new construction situation or a rental, would you have a recommendation on the type of backup system that you're gonna need?
We'll talk about that in a second. Yeah. Backup system, if we're doing a new, I'll talk about that in just a sec. Yeah.
Maybe thinking, but does that mean that off-grid is not terribly viable year-round?
We're going to talk about that in just a sec, yeah. It's coming up. I just want to go through the different types of panels. So somebody asked about Elon Musk and Tesla and solar shingles. So here's a picture of some solar shingles. Here's a picture of some solar panels built into the glass of a building used, and in this case they're using, it was positioned in such a way it creates shading inside the building as well, so it helped with their cooling load. So building integrated solar is popular in other regions, not so much here in Ontario. So often it's a part of the structure, so shingles. People like that idea because it's aesthetically pleasing, it looks nice, it's built into the building. The problem is the cost. It is still fairly new, this type of technology. Elon Musk has given us the show of hands. Who knows who Elon Musk is? Okay, everybody does. Okay, great. Elon Musk's company has yet to make money. I don't know if you guys know that or not. So he has these great ideas. He's like the Steve Jobs of our industry. He's got these great ideas, but none of them have really turned out. We're the official Tesla Powerwall folks for Eastern Ontario, and we're still waiting to get a couple of systems to install, and we've been waiting for 6 months. So he's got the vision, and I love that. He gets us talking about it. We just haven't seen it come through yet. And when it does, the stuff that is out there is so darn expensive, and this is usually an economic reason why we do this. people don't go ahead. Does that make sense? Yeah? So off-grid. So off-grid, what does off-grid mean? Off-grid means I have cut the cord. I don't have Ma Bell, Dad, you say, Ma Hydro connected to my building anymore. So how does this work? So we got solar panels, and the fundamental difference here is we're going into batteries, because when the sun comes out and when we want to turn on our lights or use the power, it's 2 different times of the day, could be 2 different times of the week. So we have to have some way of storing that power. And how do we store power? We store it in batteries. So we have the solar panels up there, and we're creating DC power. So all solar panels are creating power much like our vehicles' DC power, so it's not plug-in-the-wall power, direct current. We have a controller that controls the amount of power going to the batteries to make sure that the batteries, you know, if you got a good controller, it'll make sure the batteries are as topped up as they can be. So we're storing the batteries. Remember, this is DC, and in our houses we plug into the wall, so we have typically an inverter, which is this little black box here, and it converts it from DC to AC, right? So we're creating power, we're charging the batteries to store it, then we're converting it so we can use it inside the house. Then, yes, from here we go to our breaker panel. It's just like you're in downtown Belleville, right? Just wire your house like you're downtown Belleville, as long as you have all this ahead of time. And sometimes, well, I'd say most of the time, we put a generator in the system as well. And I could have done a little graphic here with a wind turbine, micro hydro system, because basically as long as we're charging these batteries, you know, doesn't matter how we get the power to them, as long as the batteries have the power. So can you guess what the drawback is with this system?
Expense.
The batteries.
Yeah, the expense of the batteries. Lead acid technology, somebody brought up saltwater batteries. I mean, all of that technology, unfortunately, is expensive, especially as the price of solar panels have plummeted. Like I said, from $3,000 down to, you know, $250 per panel. Batteries haven't changed that much. It's lead. It's expensive. So that's the unfortunate part. Is this part here is the expensive part.
What's expensive?
What's expensive? So I'll give you an example. If you're ever driving down the 401 and you're going past Grafton, past Coburg on your way to Toronto, if you look up on the right-hand side, you'll see Jared Johns, he's a customer of ours, and he put up a system up there, and he spent $28,000 on batteries. Remember we said $25,000 to $30,000 for a system over here? Yeah, as much on batteries.
And they need special disposal as well?
Batteries, yeah, these can be recycled. Most battery companies, there's lead, there's plastic, and basically it's distilled water or battery acid in there. So all that is very recyclable for sure. Yeah, which is great.
But they have a finite life.
They have a finite life, yes.
And how big would that system have been for $28,000?
Yeah, he's running a house.
Right.
Now,
which would be how much?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great question. So, leads to this slide. So we want you ideally under 10 kilowatt hours a day in consumption, which probably sounds like gobbledygook. What does that mean? That means you use a third.
How long an am was that? How long an amortization?
We did a 15-year loan payment. 15-year loan payment.
You guys do financing?
Yeah. Well, we don't. The credit union does.
And nobody's selling 15-year money, so that's just assuming a straight line interest rate, which will vary up and down.
Sure. Sure. This green line could go up and down, but this red line
is going to go up.
Yeah. Most people don't believe it's going to come down. Like even when we got that 25%, did everybody take a look at your bills after the 25%, the so-called 25% break we got last year? Yeah, it dropped, not 25%. And we've had 2 hydro increases since then, and a third one coming.
And in about a month, you'll pay your tax bill and pay the rest of it back.
Yeah.
To specifically answer your question at the back, yes, we can check.
Oh yeah, sorry.
We can check your location on the grid to see if Hydro One will pre-approve essentially line capacity where you are.
So one of the big keys is we got to make sure there's capacity. Not everyone has capacity on their line. This is assuming you do have, like, we put together some preliminary work to say, okay, does this make sense? Yeah. Is there line capacity? Yeah. Okay. You know.
For even for that meter, you had to do that for FIT.
Yes, even for net.
And are there any lenders in particular? Are they all treating it the same way, or is it just like any other? It all depends on your credit rating.
Yeah.
And your equity in your house.
Yeah. Credit rating. A lot of folks we deal with have lines of credit on their home.
Yeah. So
and they tend to use that. They self-finance it. But yeah, we do have access to credit unions are really good because they get it, right? But yeah, there's getting loans for solar is not as difficult as it used to be.
Based on borrowers eligibility.
That's right. That's right. Question here? Yeah.
Transformer upgrades,
Transformer upgrades.
is that something that Hydro has to do, or do they just do it with certain?
Yeah. Transformer upgrades with hydro. They do it with certain people. I don't know. I haven't figured that one out either.
Who do you know?
Yeah. Sometimes
They
it
charge
happens.
you for it.
Oh yeah, I know they charge you for it. I've been down that road many times with them for clients.
So it's extra cost for you.
Yeah. So right now, if you get the green light from Hydro and everything's good, they'll only charge you a $650 fee. I haven't done one recently. $795.
All at $800.
$800.
This is for net metering.
Net metering. They'll charge you $800. Woohoo!
And that's without a transformer.
Yeah.
Plus
If they want a
taxes.
transformer, then you gotta pay for that.
Yeah. Net metering, we don't see as much transformer issues as we did in microfit.
Oh.
Yeah. So we're not seeing microfit. That was always an issue, or it was always a potential issue.
How much is a transformer?
I've seen 25 to 7,000 in that range. It depends, but with net metering, we're just not seeing that because the consumption's going to the house, and I think that might be part of the reason why.
Now, is there a minimum size service you need to do this? Like a 200 amp, 100 amp?
No, there's no minimum size service. As long as we size
So you
things
do it on
properly.
a 100 amp service?
Yeah, 100 amp service, yeah. Yeah, we've done that. I don't think there's much 60 amp services out there
No,
anymore.
I don't think so.
But you could, I mean, a full-size system is what, 40 amps? But yeah, 100 amp system is fine. Yeah.
Real estate values?
Real estate values. Yeah, I can tell you a story. Is that okay? I like telling stories. So I put up a microfit system on my house in 2011. Went through separation. Unfortunately, I had to sell the house quickly thereafter. And of course, nobody knew what this stuff was. And the real estate guy I had is a good friend of mine. I've known him for years. And he takes a look at my house. You know how real estate guys are. They do all the comparables, blah, 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 blah. He comes in and says, Brad, your house is worth this much. I said, okay, sit down, let's have some scotch. Right? So we sat down, started talking. And because the real estate guys don't understand it. And I said, well, I put, back then I think it was a $30,000 system on my roof. And I said, what do you think, Jeff, is going to happen when they come in and see a house that doesn't need power? Like, because they're just thinking of the value of the house. And the solar thing, he just, it's like a giant TV on your roof or something. He didn't understand it. So, he wanted to list the house at $369. It was on the lake. And I said, okay, let's go to 420. He says, okay, after about 3 scotches. He agreed and said, but we're leaving it there for 2 weeks. And if you don't get any bites, I'm bringing it down. I said, perfect. Sold the house in 2 days. And I got $419, not $420. you know, so when we talk to people, and I wrote up the ad that he put online, and I did the paperwork, I did the legwork because I knew he didn't understand, so I wrote it up in a certain way, and it was like the second person went through the house, put an offer in, and it was done. So if you're selling your house with this on it, I would just recommend that you do that sort of thing. It's getting more common, and you'll tend to get the value, if not more, out of the system.
Have you had any feedback from people that in the recent years where we've switched to market value assessment, and they've told you what the differences in their taxes were before you put it on and after?
Yeah, so
They would have to
taxation issues. So in the taxation code of Canada, we got it written in that you can't increase the taxes on a property based on solar panels.
Yeah, but this is provincial, not federal.
No, this is
Market value is provincial.
yeah, this is provincial.
Oh, I thought you just said federal.
No, sorry, if I did, sorry, provincial. So,
So you can increase.
that's correct.
Okay.
The value of the home, solar panels have nothing to do with the value of the home in a taxation situation. Yep. We got them to accept the fact that this is electronic equipment. It's not structural. It's not shingles. It's not roof trusses. It's not drywall.
That doesn't have anything to do with market value.
Yeah.
Market value is the demand.
But anyways, they just didn't. Yeah, they just didn't. They can't do that.
Just a side question to your story though, did you have any issues brought up when you sold your house about the new owners and just taking over the stewardship of that
The stewardship
system?
of the
I mean, I
solar.
know if your system was put in 2011, it's a little older system and
Yep.
it would have had some of the older equipment that requires a little more knowledge to manage. And if you're some homeowner that's never had it before and you walk in, it can be pretty daunting.
Yeah. So the question is, when I sold my house, the new homeowners, how daunting it was for them. I don't know. I grew up in the country, and when I found out who they were, I said to my real estate guy, "Give me their phone number." I phoned them up and I said, "Come to the house. Let's show you where the septic is. Let's show you where the well is. Let's show you where I put the line down to the garage. Let's go." And I just grew up doing that. Okay. Okay, great. All right. Okay. Then what we do is we go to your roof, and we have this very fancy electronic piece of equipment, as you can see, that measures the sun intensity on your roof. So I don't know if you can see this or not, but in this globe, which is this device right here, we've got a tree sitting here, we've got a house sitting here, more trees, the person taking the picture's right in the middle. These lines on here represents the sun, and then there's times of day. So we just take this fancy piece of equipment and we take a piece of crayon and we trace all this out, and that tells us how much sun intensity you have on your roof.
Any time of the day, or any time of the year.
Any time of the year, yeah. So if you look at this, I can hand this around. You'll see along the bottom times of day, and then if you look up the middle, you'll see the months of the year, and then there's percentage numbers there as well. So we can take that. I mean, I'm using this for over 20 years. So you do accurate measurements of your roof, your sun's the intensity of the sun on the roof, and then we can put together cost-benefit analysis based on your situation.
Steve.
Or you do like to some people,
Steve.
how much do you like that oak tree? Is that oak tree worth $5,000? Yes? Okay, leave it then. And then we put together a design of how it's going to, a little design of how it looks like on the roof. So there's a case of where we're doing it on that place in Kingston. So some quick facts. If we do this, you got a south-facing roof with no shading. We can show you that in a couple of years. Doing this is cheaper than, like I said in the beginning, renting hydro like you are now or owning it. Usually about 3 years you start seeing the savings because that red line, if you remember. Off-grid, because of the batteries, is not quite economical. So there's the big question. Why doesn't everybody do this? If you're worried about it. Well, I'll say right now, there's confusion about microfit and net metering, and they're fancy, weird terms. They're not normal things we go around saying at, Christmas parties. Lack of access to capital funds, and then for some folks, access to the grid, because there's no capacity. And you know what? Most people don't even know about it. They don't even know that you can do this. Yeah, in the back there?
So 3 years is like when you find that on average your cost analysis is like transitionary.
That's right.
What's the average, like actual payback? Like if your system after financing is 30 grand, when are you typically finding the average payback for that 30 grand?
I've never looked at where the actual paybacks, people think of their monthly bill more than anything else, and a lot of our questions are you going to be in that house for a while? Does that make sense? Or if you're not going to be in the house for a while, when you go to sell it, you think you'll get your money back out of it. And if you're not going to be in the house in a while, you don't think you're getting money back, then it's not a good fit. But if you're going to be there for a long time, you will. Yeah.
I have a question for you, and it's one I'm not expecting, a real hard and fast answer, but built a new home recently, 4 years ago, 2,700 square feet with a 200 amp service. I brought along my electrical bill tonight from Hydro One. I have the other 11 in my hand, but I just brought the latest one. And my very latest electrical bill was $71.74.
Congratulations, that's a
I think
great
the highest
bill.
one was in December, it soared to $86.
$86, that's great.
So am I in a position to even consider
Yes.
making a conversion?
Yeah, you just need a small system. You only need a 1 or 2 kilowatt system. That's a tiny. Who here has a $70 a month hydro bill? Good for you guys. Great. Most people. Who here has a $300 a month hydro bill? $250? Most people were seeing between $200 and $300. Most folks. No, you are. You just need something smaller. You don't need a.
Still have incentive?
Yeah. Yeah, that's where we put together the cost benefit analysis, because everybody's is different. Yeah. Yeah, delivery. Oh. How do solar panels impact the cost of delivery? Who here loves their delivery cost? Who here has a higher delivery cost than hydro?
That's right.
Yeah, so.
Can I answer this from my experience?
Curtis, go ahead.
Okay, so pre-net metering, I was paying $3,600 a year for hydro. Post-net metering, I'm paying $600 a year for hydro. So to answer your question specifically about delivery, this is not the exact math because we were talking about earlier, I don't think they even know how they charge it, but what we've been able to figure out thus far is the delivery charge is roughly 50-50. 50% of your delivery charge is based on where you are on the grid, rural, low density, etc. Right? So you're going to get that on your bill regardless. You're also going to get the admin charges. Okay, that works out in my case to almost to the penny to $50 a month. Where net metering, the other half of your delivery charge is based on your consumption. So if you have a net metering system where, and again, this is a kilowatt hour for kilowatt hour credit. So if you're making all of your electricity or enough credit to offset all of your electricity, you don't really care how much it costs because you're not paying for it anyway. So as those costs go up, you would have paid, but you're not going to because you're producing your own. Okay? Then that 50% of the delivery charge based on consumption also goes away, except for when you're pulling from the grid. And just one last thing on net metering, in our climate, like we've been talking about with solar hot water, right? A bell curve. Overproduction in the summertime, underproduction in the wintertime, but in net metering the nice thing is A, two-tier billing, like Brad said, so you're not only not worried about how much hydro costs because you're producing your own or credit to offset it, but you're also not worried about time of use, which is nice. No more waiting till after 7 o'clock to do whatever you want to do, which drives me crazy because I got to home and make dinner for my kids before 7 o'clock. Typically they're hungry before 7 o'clock. And you have 1 year from when you produce that credit to use it. So generally, you go into the negative in the summertime and use that credit up over the winter.
So, real quick answer is, you'll end up with a $40 to $50 hydro bill per month if you produce all your own power.
Including the builder.
Yeah, your connection fee to the grid is 40 to 50 bucks a month, whether you use any power or not. And we don't know exactly where it is because everybody gets charged different. We just know it's between 40 and 50 bucks. Okay, real quick, I've been told I gotta speed her up. The future, what's the future? So Tesla, everybody's heard of Elon Musk, Tesla. We are the official Eastern Ontario Powerwall supplier. So the concept is here, the cost of hydro is cheap at night. I'm going to take it, store it in this fancy battery thing that mounts on my wall. Then when the cost of hydro goes up, I'm going to use that fancy battery thing to power my house. That's the concept. When Elon Musk announced Tesla, and like I said, he's a visionary. You know, $2,500, that's what these were going to cost. Guess how much they cost? Yeah, you're around the, what, 20 grand mark? So, it is not very expensive. There is no payback.
Hang on.
Yeah.
$27,000 American.
Yes. Sorry, yes. I should have clarified that. It's just such a crazy number. Now, we do have people that are doing it, but, you know, they've got a lot of money. So, you know, it's the apple of the alternative energy world. So, I said before I'm going to talk about greenhouse gas emissions, because there's a stewardship council, and I thought that would be a nice tie-in. So, we talk about carbon emissions. We talk a lot about solar. The other side of our business is fireplaces. If we do zone heating, we can reduce our footprint by 28%, our carbon footprint. If we use wood stoves, anybody here heat with wood? Yeah. If you use wood pellets, you're looking at saving about, if you're using a wood stove, for every bush cord, full cord, however you want to define that, that you burn, you're saving about a ton of carbon versus using natural gas. Yeah?
Is that not wrong that wood is the dirtiest source? Because it says it's extremely low in emissions.
Yeah.
Depends how you burn it.
And I'm saying it's a lot in the way people burn. If
Yeah.
you burn a good hot fire, it's better.
Who here has a wood stove that's newer than 20 years old? Who here has a wood stove that's older than 20 years old? That's the fundamental difference. In 1989, the rules changed around, and we have to test wood stoves for carbon emission, for particulate emissions. So a stove that's over 20 years old, you're probably emitting about 80 to 100 grams per hour. A newer stove, it's now regulated, it's now regulated at less than 4 grams an hour. In 2020, it'll be regulated less than 2 grams an hour. We're going from 100 grams of particulate down to less than 2. We have stoves now that are burning 0.9 grams an hour.
That's not the outdoor boilers.
No, that's not the outdoor boilers, no. We'll talk about that after if you want. So if you'd use this, you're saving about 2 to 5 tons of carbon per year.